Want to plan your next fishing trip without the hassle? FishingBooker.com is the best way to find and book a fishing charter anywhere in the world. Whether you're chasing trophy fish or just looking for a family day on the water, Fishing Booker makes it simple, fast, and secure. With thousands of experienced guides, verified reviews, and 24/7 customer support, Fishing Booker takes the guesswork out of planning. Visit FishingBooker.com and book your trip today. Fishing Booker. Fishing trips made easy.
This episode is brought to you by Boat Trader, America's largest boating marketplace. Whether you're buying, selling, or upgrading, the Boat Trader app makes it easy. With the biggest selection of new and used boats from dealers and private sellers. Browse, compare, and even apply for financing. All in one place. Download the Boat Trader app and start your search today.
Welcome to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. I'm Matthew of castingacross.com, where I explore the quarry and culture of fly fishing. This is episode 351, which means we are back to our regularly scheduled podcast slate, where I interact with your comments, your questions, and your accusations. And I think we get a couple of accusations this week. I'd put them kind of more towards the accusation part of the spectrum than the comment or question. But before that, just wanted to let you know why we are at 351 and not 350 when we're doing this. Is because last week, as I've done with every 50th episode, I've invited somebody from my family on to talk about fly fishing. So this last week was my son. He and I went down to South Central Pennsylvania, fished the Cumberland Valley, and so we get a little trip report from him and from myself. But anyway, without further ado, we will now get into listener and reader, and because I have a pretty consistent presence on YouTube these days, viewer questions and comments. So the first one comes from Juan, and this is an old article I wrote called Consider the Fallfish. So this article came out back in 2019, and the article starts off like this: I'm not going to brag and say I'm some kind of fall fish catching phenom. I'll simply let the evidence speak for itself. At a purely quantitative level, I'm super good at catching fall fish. And then I go on and on and on, and including the line, which I really liked, which was, I'm too fall fishy to fail. And so, articles from 2019, and Juan wrote, methinks there was a tiny touch of sarcasm in this article. Otherwise, you're very naive. It's hard. Scratch that. Impossible not to catch fall fish. They will strike at anything, even those Temu male anatomy shaped lures. Skill is not a trait you need to catch fall fish. It's highly likely that if you tied a sharp bone to some tooth floss and tossed it into a pond or stream that is their habitat, you, will likely catch 3 fall fish for any other apex fish such as bass, walleye, or capitalized P, pike. Well, Juan, you are right. You are an astute reader. There was a tiny touch of sarcasm in that article. I enjoy writing with a little bit of sarcasm from time to time, and every once in a while I even use it in my daily speech. But to be honest with you, I think fall fish are worth considering, and I do think that they're worth celebrating. There's another article somewhere in Casting Across, I think it probably came out sometime in the last 5 years, about celebrating fall fish because gent down in Virginia had caught, I think, a world record, if not a state record for the Commonwealth of Virginia, fall fish. And that's the kind of thing that does take some work. I mean, sure, you can chance into it, in as much as you could chance into a world record brown trout or a world record largemouth bass. But chasing after the biggest of something, there's a good chance that you are having to put some skill and energy and effort into it. Now, I'm not saying that fall fish are more selective than native brook trout. I'm not saying that fall fish are more selective or harder fighting than wild rainbows or browns. But what I will say is that fall fish are harder fighting than a lot of stock trout of the same size. Now, they don't have the beautiful colors, but a lot of stock trout don't have a lot of beautiful colors. They don't have the prestige behind them. I mean, I don't have there's no Fall Fish Unlimited that I'm aware of. There's no books on my bookshelf that are all about fall fish, let alone, dozens upon dozens of them. But they, again, pound for pound, are going to fight as good as, if not better than, a stocked trout. And they are native to most of our waterways here on the East Coast, which you can't say about browns or rainbows. If you are fishing for a purely kind of quantitative perspective, like I want to catch the most fish of a particular species, then yes, fall fish aren't going to hit that same sort of category as a trout, even if it's a stock trout. But if you're seeing that the sense of place where you are matters and native fish matter, then the fall fish count for something. So for me, when I catch a 8, 10, 12-inch fall fish on a little tiny creek up here in New England, there's something a little bit more exciting about that than catching some introduced panfish or certainly catching a stocked trout. There's something about a hard-fighting, thick fall fish, even when it's in spawning season. It's got those nodules on its face that is a little bit more pure than catching a bleached out rainbow that has just been released out of the stocking truck, or maybe even was released out of the stocking truck a few months ago. Now, you might disagree wholeheartedly with me, and that's fine. There's no right or wrong answer in this. But both in this article, Consider the Fall Fish, which was definitely tongue-in-cheek. Again, good job, Juan. Or the other article I've written about specifically fall fish, which is kind of silly saying it now that in almost 10 years of doing this, I've only written 2 articles on fall fish. I think that fall fish are worth, like any other minnow species, any other kind of rough fish, as our friends in the UK say. They're worth appreciating for what they bring to the table. And I'm as someone who's kind of trout focused in my angling and in my writing and in my podcasting and in my reading and all that sort of stuff, I'm okay with saying things like I would rather catch an 8-inch fall fish than an 8-inch stock trout. I'd rather catch an 8-inch panfish than an 8-inch wild trout in a lot of situations. It's all about kind of what it is, where it is. And fall fish fall right into that category. And just one more follow-up thing. I wonder if Juan has purchased and fished with those Temu male anatomy shaped lures. But all that to say, you know what? Sometimes fall fish are the apex predator, and prior to the introduction of other species, other fish species, fall fish were the apex predator in a lot of small streams on the East Coast. So there you go. But hey, Juan, I do appreciate you reading, and I do appreciate you writing in. All right, the next question comes in from Timothy. Timothy writes, in response to a podcast from 5 episodes ago, which was the best wet wading gear, he writes, what's the best way to keep dirt/rocks out of shoes while wet wading? Gaiters don't work well for me. Thanks. This is a great question, Timothy, and I appreciate you writing in and asking. So when he says gaiters, he means some sort of clothing device that is affixed over the ankle to create in theory, an impervious surface from your leg down to the top of your shoes. You see a lot of these when people are hiking, and it's a way to keep the water from rolling down their pant leg or their bare leg into their shoes, or to keep ticks out of their the bottom of their pant legs. But you can use neoprene ones also. I remember back in the day when I was fishing in neoprene waders, they didn't have integrated gravel guards. And so I would buy these gravel guards / gaiters that you'd slide on over your toe, over your heel, up to your calf, put your boots on, and then slide them down. It created a really, really tight seal. But man alive, those things were miserable to deal with when things were frozen or when you were really, really hot. That said, if gaiters don't work for you, traditional gaiters don't, I would try a neoprene one that is tight. So I'm not sure if they make them anymore. I guarantee you that you can find them somewhere on the internet, but I just haven't seen them like in Cabela's or Bass Pro Shop. It's kind of the place where I assume to see them. But instead of getting like a gaiter that's designed for hiking, I think that using like a neoprene cuff or collar would definitely work. And that said, one of the things that I mentioned to Timothy was that even wet wading shoes with neoprene collars allow debris in. So I have a couple of pairs of shoes that have like a neoprene collar built into them. And a lot of the wet wading shoes that you see made by fly fishing companies, Sims, Orvis, and so on and so forth, they have an integrated neoprene collar. Now, these really only work if that neoprene collar comes up over your ankle. And here's the reason why. Neoprene is indeed flexible and it is indeed intended to be form-fitting, but that part of your anatomy, if the seam is on your ankle, as you flex and move, if you look down at your ankle, unless your ankles are a particular shape, kind of like a Coke bottle shape, or if they are really, quite topographical, like an atoll out in the ocean, there's a good chance that there is going to be a part of your ankle, like on your instep, for example, where as you flex and move, that even neoprene, which is form-fitting, is going to create a little bit of a gap, and that will inevitably be where sediment and debris and maybe even gravel or part of a crayfish will find its way in as you are wading. So, just to kind of recap, even the wet wading shoes that are made by fly fishing companies, if that neoprene cuff is at or below or slightly above the ankle, it's going to allow something in, and you can't be upset about it. It's just the reality of the way your ankle is shaped and the way it's been designed to move. So, the solution, I would say, is to either buy a wet wading sock, kind of thing. I mentioned this in that podcast episode, which is a higher neoprene collar that goes up, maybe mid calf. Now you're not going to want to wear that out afterwards. I mean, I guess it's if you're going to a bar on the edge of a river, people will know why you're doing it. And honestly, I do think that one of the reasons why a lot of the wet wading shoes look the way they are is so that they don't look like wading shoes. They look like shoes that you wear into the water. But I think there are some functional drawbacks with that. The soles might be great, but again, a lot of folks don't like the idea of wading with gravel and debris in their foot. It's uncomfortable. It's also a way to wear down your waders pretty easily. You'll get a blister first, but if that happens for a few times, or you manage to avoid and circumvent getting the blister by wearing some wool socks, then you're using that wool sock and the pressure to grind that debris and that sediment into the bottom of that footwear, creating, of course, some sort of wear. So my solution at the end of the day would be to either find a tight neoprene cuff / a gravel guard to slide over your shoes, the top of your shoes into your leg, or to use a neoprene sock that comes up a little bit higher. But there's very few products in the market that are going to be a one-size-fits-all. I will say, let me back up one step. They still make them, but they make them for the flats. They don't necessarily make them for freshwater, at least that I'm aware of. But they are like neoprene bodied boots that come well up over your ankle and they zip up. Now, they zip up, and I had a pair that I wore for a number of years, and they zipped up super tight. And I don't have particularly large ankles or calves, and they got really, really tight on me. And they did a great job of keeping out sand because I primarily wore them on the beach. And if it can keep out sand in the ocean, it's going to do a good job of keeping out freshwater junk. So the problem with those, of course, is that the soles were more rigid, and they were designed for walking on rocks and sand, not so much on mud and smooth rocks. So like ocean rocks that had a little bit more of a barnacle-y situation going on. Anyway, lots of thoughts about wet wading gear, but we'll leave it at that. All right, next almost accusation comes from an article called "The Optimism of the Small Stream Angler." And John writes, honestly, I get a little annoyed with this notion that small stream fishing and fish are so easy. Maybe I'm a lousy fisherman and I don't disagree that fly selection doesn't matter much, but at least around here in North Carolina, you have to be very stealthy in clear, shallow water. And that is typically after a couple-mile hike to get to the stream, and wading looks a lot more like rock climbing. As one friend said after a trip, it was too much hiking and too little fishing for my taste. He didn't say anything about it being easy. Okay, so kind of like the first article, although a lot less accusation in John's comment here. I think that the point of what I wrote was missed ever so slightly. So the article, "The Optimism of the Small String Angler," was talking about not how easy it is, but how we get excited when we see like the next pool. And I actually said that. I said, in response to John on the website, it isn't easy. But when we round that bend and we see that long glassy pool, there's optimism that there's a fish there. When we come up over the rise of that little waterfall and we see that big plunge pool in the pool above us, there's optimism that there is a fish there, and there's that we are the one who's going to catch it. And I think that optimism and that excitement and that enthusiasm is one of the things that makes small stream fishing so great. I've had days where I have been, on streams that I have fished dozens of times, and I've gotten skunked. And I think, what happened? Was there a flood? Did somebody throw chemicals in the headwaters? Did I come right after somebody who was super duper fishy? Why am I not catching fish? I've also had days where I've been on one river and I've been skunked, and so I just hop over to the next river and I've killed it. So there is a lot of uncertainty about your actual success. But that has nothing to do with optimism, especially if you've had those good days. And I think a lot of us have had those good days. I've had those good days on streams that have a road paralleling the whole time, and so I'm just so surprised that folks weren't catching those fish that day or the day before me in those same spots. And I've had those days where I've had to hike 5-6 miles up in the mountains. But on the same note, I have had bad days in both of those situations. But it still doesn't make me think like this cast is the cast, this hole is the hole, this pool is the pool. And I think that's one of the things that is really exciting about small stream fishing is that if you kind of play your cards right, you will put yourself in a situation where you are casting to an opportunistic fish. And this does not mean that you don't need to be stealthy. It does not mean that you don't need to have some kind of general perspective on the fly pattern that you choose. So a lot of times I say that, it's presentation over pattern, and I'm certainly not the only one that says that. But that doesn't mean that, I just would rather fish a caddis than a mayfly. In a time where you're going to want to you have a much more subtle presentation, or there may be a bunch of mayflies buzzing around. So it's not that you can't do anything you want to do and expect good things. It's just that I've probably had those days where I've done everything I've wanted to do and I've had good days. And that feeds into that optimism, that along with the fact that these are opportunistic fish that are going to oftentimes be pretty responsive to your overtures. And then as far as too much hiking and too little fishing, honestly, that is a drawback that some people absolutely hate. Some people do not want to spend an hour hiking in. Some people don't want to spend half an hour hiking in. I personally like the idea of hiking in as absolutely far as I can, and I don't mind hiking half the day and fishing half the day. That's great. I think that I'm always incredibly ambitious on the front end, and on the back end, I just want to fish, fish, fish. But I want to fish, fish, fish because I put myself in a position where I'm that far into the woods onto relatively undisturbed or even virgin water for that day or for that season. So yeah, some people don't like that, but that's why they make pull-offs. That's why they make ramps that go off into the water where people don't even really have to get their feet dirty. So it's kind of like a to each his own sort of situation. And the idea of wading like rock climbing, again, if you are physically fit for that, if you have the stability for that, and if you know that's coming, then I think for a lot of us that is part of the fun and part of the challenge. So again, John, I do appreciate you reading and writing in, and hopefully, even if it is a challenge, that you have the optimism that even though it was hard yesterday, it's going to be easier today. Or if the fish were really giving me a hard time yesterday, it's going to be easier today because of what I put in yesterday. The energy, the effort, the things that I learned, and the things I'm going to put into practice today are going to make my experience better today. That's the kind of thing that I think also feeds into this kind of optimism of the small stream angler, because I think one of the things I mentioned in that article was you can really kind of look at the entire picture. You look at a big river, and there's a lot of unknowns. The fish can be 50 yards to your left, and they can be 20 yards to your right. But in a small stream, they're going to be in that pool. If they're there, they're in that pool. And so you have limited the amount of variables. Then it goes down to the next level. Do I fish on the top? Do I fish underwater? If I'm fishing underwater, do I put some motion in that fly? And then what pattern do I pick? And so there are in some ways less variables that you have to put into play. Again, I don't want to say it's easy. I like fishing with an expensive fly rod that helps me put my cast exactly where they want to go. I like fishing with the expensive sunglasses that help me get the advantage of those fish. all those things I think factor in, but it's not easy, but there is a cause for optimism. All right, 3 great comments. I appreciate it. This has been a great month. I probably could knock out 3 more questions and comments and accusations that have been thrown my way over this last month, but keep them coming. As always, I try to respond directly once I get something on YouTube, on the website, via email, on social media, whatever it might be. So if you have a question, hey, what did you mean by this? Or could you give me more clarification? Do you have another resource? If you have a comment, you just want to say, hey, I like that. Or, hey, I do that too. Awesome. I love that. And if you have an accusation, if you want to call out my fallfish journalism, then I'll take some time and, put on my big boy waders, but I'll get over it, and we'll all be better for it. This week on castingacross.com, there was 2 articles, as there always are, every Monday, every Wednesday, and then every Friday you get this lovely podcast. Monday's article was called Support a Shop That Is Not a Fly Shop. Now, I'm surprised I didn't get any. This wasn't intended to be antagonistic or clickbait or anything like that. But recently we had an outdoor store close here in town, and the only thing I bought there ever, I bought archery stuff. I had them tune up my bow, do some things like that. But they had a fishing section, which was actually pretty good for where we are. A lot of ice fishing stuff, some stuff for the coast, and then some stuff for the local bass lakes. But they had a couple boxes of flies, and they were good flies. I mean, they were almost all little tiny streamers, but they're the kind of things that you use up here to catch brook trout and to catch whatever else they've thrown in the rivers and the ponds up here. And it just got me thinking that there are so many places over the years, particularly when I was a young angler, where that was my fly shop. All I could get there was maybe some floating, maybe another spool of tippet if I'd ran out, some split shot, which may or may not be fly fishing specific. But I could also get a handful of flies and probably some good intel. And so I am all for supporting fly shops, capital F, capital S fly shops. But if you don't have one around, or you're in a situation where, I need flies, and you just so happen to see that at that gas station that you're grabbing a Gatorade at, or, filling up in, that they've got a little box of flies, like, don't think that that's lesser than. That's going to be an opportunity for you to not only get what you need without having to drive further in that moment, but potentially get a great bead on information. I love fly shops, and I think that they're an integral aspect of this pursuit that we are engaging in. But that appreciation for them should not be to the detriment of taking advantage of what is maybe much more simple and really meets a need and fills a niche when that's there, and supporting those small businesses also. All right, and then Wednesday's article is called Video, Making the Fly Fishing Transition from Fresh to Salt. This latest fly fishing book review on YouTube is a look at Barry and Kathy Beck's Fly Fishing the Flats, which came out in 1999. I mean, that's 26 years ago, but it feels like it's older than that. It's a great volume. It is, in my mind, what a good fly fishing instructional book should be, in that it gives you all the tools so that when you go read a more complicated book, or when these days you get on a saltwater fly fishing blog, or you watch a video where the person's really giving you some pertinent, maybe even specific, detailed information, that you are going to have everything you need to be able to pay attention and get something out of it. So I would strongly suggest that you check that out if you are a trout angler who is thinking about getting into saltwater fly fishing. If you want a book that I consider a modern instructional classic, definitely check out the Beck's Fly Fishing the Flats. This week's recommendation on Casting Across is 6 months from now is the fly fishing show. So put it on your calendar. If you don't do it now, you're going to book it up with something else. I'm not going to give you the rundown of all the dates of the fly fishing show for 2026 because I will put a link to their website in the show notes over at castingacross.com on this podcast page. and you can check it out there. I just got word that they had to cancel their Atlanta show. I guess they're trying to find another site for it because the convention center had to have them pull out for whatever reason. But all the major stops, Marlboro and Edison out in California, and in Colorado and Lancaster. I'm sure I've missed one or two off the top of my head, but again, this is being recorded in July, and that happens in January, February, March. So definitely put it on your calendar if you usually go, and if you haven't gone, and maybe I will see you there. Thanks for listening to the Casting Across Fly Fishing podcast. Please subscribe to your favorite podcast app and rate the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Then head over to castingacross.com for 3 posts a week on the people, places, and things that go into the pursuit of fish.
Hey guys, this is Melissa Bachman. Are you ready to stop spooking deer before it's even time to hunt them? Then you need the new Flex S Dark cellular trail camera from SpyPoint. With a no-glow flash option, long-lasting solar power, and a ton of settings that can be changed anytime through the SpyPoint app, there are no more excuses for letting your deer get wise before the season even starts. So check it out for yourself and see why the SpyPoint Flex S Dark is the unstoppable and undetectable scouting tool you need for your next hunt.
Bow hunting all comes down to a moment. And in the moment, you want equipment on your bow that will get the job done. Trophy Ridge products are the tools bow hunters trust. React technology sights, rests, stabilizers, and quivers to help a bow hunter be successful in the field. And those tools are from Trophy Ridge.